Theatrics, slogans, and empty noise. That's what the world leaders witnessed at the United Nations just a short while back. This came as members of the Pakistani delegation broke into chants praising Pakistan and Shehbaz Sharif right in the middle of a global platform.
To the fearless architects of this victory, to every officer and soldier, heirs of our martyrs, and their sacrifice shall never be in vain, inshallah.
And as diplomats from around the world looked on in disbelief, Pakistan once again reduced serious diplomacy to stage-managed spectacles. But beyond the slogans lying something far more troubling, a long-standing pattern of propaganda, denial and distortion. And yet, in a bizarre twist, Shehbaz Sharif today has once again announced that his government has nominated Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. He called it, and I'm quoting here, the least we could do for his love of peace, and praised Trump as a man of peace.
Pakistan nominated him for Nobel Peace Prize, and I think this is the least we could do for his love for peace, and I think truly he's a man of peace.
So that's the Pakistan Prime Minister praising Trump's supposed peacemaking, and it comes in stark contrast to his own recent rhetoric. Trump has repeatedly backed Israel's military actions in Gaza, even as thousands of Palestinian civilians were killed in the conflict.
Israeli leadership has unleashed a shameful campaign against the innocent Palestinians, which history will always remember as one of its darkest chapters.
Now, this shocking theatrics coming just hours after Shehbaz Sharif, along with Asim Munir, met Trump, and the meeting shortly after a US-Pakistan trade deal that some in Islamabad had hoped to frame as a diplomatic breakthrough, one that could shape their narrative on Operation Sindoor. Pakistan's narrative on Operation Sindoor, remember, has been completely exposed recently, and this time by one of their own. In a stunning admission to Al Jazeera, Pakistan's foreign minister and deputy prime minister has acknowledged that India never agreed to any third-party mediation, and this directly contradicting what President Trump once claimed, that he had helped broker a ceasefire between the two sides. Moving on for now, Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Toiba, the terror outfit behind some of the deadliest strikes on India, is shifting bases deep into Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. After Jaish and Hizbul, Lashkar also is on the run, dodging Indian strikes, but not out of reach. Take a look.
In May, India's Operation Sindoor was a thunderous turning point. Indian forces unleashed a fierce assault. Indian missiles, precision-guided bombs struck hard, flattening some of Pakistan's most fortified terror headquarters in a stunning display of precision and resolve. The firestorm rattled more than buildings. It shattered the illusion of immunity for Pakistan's terror network. The terror map of Pakistan is now being redrawn. The terrorists are wary of future Indian strikes that are running deep inside Pakistani territory. Fresh intel assessments reveal Lashkar-e-Toiba has abandoned its training hubs in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and is now digging inside Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Watch these images. The new terror facility, codenamed Markaz Jihad-e-Aqsa, is rising brick by brick. One floor is already built, with more under construction. The training center, once complete by December 2025, is expected to churn new batches of terrorists. The intelligence assessment warns that shifting bases won't shield terrorists if future attacks trace to these camps. The Indian military has the capability to hit even such distant locations if there is a requirement to do so. The terror operatives in Pakistan know that nowhere is truly out of range in the war against terrorism. India's message is unmistakable. Hide where you can, run if you must, but you cannot escape the crosshairs forever.
After India's Operation Sindoor, under which India was able to strike deep into Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and inflict a deep and big blow to terror camps there, and after that the increased assessment has been of the terror groups now building their infrastructure again, but particularly in the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The dossier basically says that the Indian side has the capability to take action against these terror hubs, even though they are now closer to the Afghan border. In case these terror hubs are found getting involved in any terror activity in India. With video journalist Neeraj Patel, Siddhant Sibal for WION in New Delhi.
Starting October, Indian citizens will get the rare chance to walk through two intensely sensitive and historic sites on the India-China border, Doklam and Chola, places where Indian soldiers once stood eye to eye with the Chinese troops, will now be open for the tourists under a bold new initiative. In fact, the Sikkim government has officially issued a notification to this effect now, allowing the visitors to explore these strategic zones beginning October 1. The decision falling under the Indian Army's nationwide program, Bharat Ranbhumi Darshan, designed to showcase battlefronts near the international border. Officials describing this as war tourism, a concept that links national pride with travel. In Sikkim, 4 locations falling under this theme: Doklam, Chola, Nathula, and the Guru Dongmar Lake. In fact, across India, similar destinations have been identified in Arunachal Pradesh, West Bengal, Gujarat, Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, Rajasthan, Punjab, Uttarakhand. Doklam shot into the spotlight, remember, in 2017 when the Chinese troops attempted to extend a road through Bhutanese territory. Indian soldiers moved in, enforcing the security pact with Bhutan, and blocked the construction. For more than 2 months, both armies stood eyeball to eyeball until Beijing backed down. Chola carrying its own history. On October 1, 1967, Chinese soldiers intruded into Sikkim, sparking a fierce skirmish. Indian troops struck back with force, pushing them nearly 3 kilometers into retreat. And that victory remains a defining moment in India's border defense. Authorities have said access to these sensitive zones will remain tightly supervised, with the Indian Army along with the Sikkim Police and the Tourism and Civil Aviation Department overseeing all movement of visitors. For the first time, travelers can witness several historic sites where India defended its sovereignty. And we are shifting focus for now. Global debt has reached a new record of almost $338 trillion. But who is funding this? And more importantly, are governments borrowing responsibly? Or is the money being created out of thin air? What's going on? Could a sudden collapse trigger a global financial crisis? One thing is clear right now: the surge in debt is becoming unsustainable. Let's just dive into the debt bubble that's shaping the world economy and what it really means for you. First, let's have a look at what exactly is global debt. Global debt is the total money borrowed by individuals, governments, companies, banks, meaning almost everyone. Next, Here's a look at who is actually funding this. Global debt is not funded by a single entity. This is funded by a combination of governments, corporations, investors, banks, and financial markets. Basically, governments borrow from domestic and international markets by selling bonds, and a majority of government debt is usually held by the country's central bank, domestic banks, the financial institutions, and the retail investors, apart from the governments of other countries. Corporations borrow to fund operations, expansion, and investments, often through financial institutions or by issuing their own bonds, and even household borrowings are included in global debt. So loans for mortgages, education, other consumer credit also coming under global debt. And now let's look at the debt of the major economies. Japan's public debt, the highest among developed nations, with a ratio of about 255% of its GDP. A large amount of that debt is mostly held by the Bank of Japan and domestic banks and insurance companies rather than foreign entities. US debt is also primarily funded by domestic entities. Roughly 80% of the public debt is held by US investors. And that includes mutual funds, banks, pension funds, and the Federal Reserve. About 20% is held by foreign entities like Japan, the UK, and China. Other countries buy US debt to manage their foreign currency reserves and secure stable returns as well. Now, overall, global debt added over $21 trillion in just the first half of the year. Governments, corporations, and households are all borrowing more. But the largest share is government debt in major economies. Central banks have played a crucial role injecting liquidity to keep borrowing costs low, and critics are saying this is akin to borrowing from a notional entity. Money is effectively being created to fund spending, raising questions about long-term sustainability as well. Economic crisis bets from high debt are fast turning into a reality, it seems. In terms of the money, the United States leading with over $37 trillion in debt, driven by high deficits and defense spending. China's debt is rising fast, with local governments and the property sector fueling concerns. Japan remains the outlier, with debt sustained only by ultra-low interest rates and largely domestic investors. In Europe, the crisis is spiraling, with the UK, France, and Italy facing growing debt unrest. And in terms of the debt to GDP ratio, Japan topping the chart at 255%. Italy, France, and the US are all above 100%. While China remains on a rising trajectory, its debt basically is projected to exceed 300% if the local debt is included. Now, ultimately, the debt must be serviced, and high debt can mean higher taxes, reduced public spending, and inflation, all affecting the ordinary citizens. India stands out as a case study. Public debt has been gradually moderated from 62.6% of the GDP in 2021 to an estimated 56.8% in 2025. Private sector borrowing is rising in a productive way, funding infrastructure and growth, and analysts are saying disciplined borrowing coupled with strong economic growth is key to avoiding a global crash. So what does that mean for you and me? Basically, rising global debt affects public services and even the value of your savings and investments. And while governments and central banks try to manage the risks, the size of the debt pile means that we all have a stake in how the world navigates this financial tightrope.